Hello again to everyone and welcome back to the Naton State. I'm Charles Naton, once more shining a bright light into the dusty broom cupboards of democracy to see what scurries out. Today we're going to be taking a look at the report from the Public Accounts Committee, which was published on the 23rd of January. You may be aware of this as there have been a few articles in the press about it, but in my opinion not nearly enough. It's rare for a dry parliamentary document like this to use words like catastrophic when it's been describing a sequence of events. Not only that, it's extremely rare for its written recommendations to include a recommendation to be referred to the Serious Fraud Office, but that's how bad this situation has got. What situation are we talking about? Well, it's something that they rather oddly call faulty energy installations. But what does that actually mean? Well, we'll get into that now. So here's the report, and you'll find a link to it down below if you want to download the whole thing. It concerns the performance of two different but quite similar schemes, which are the Great British Insulation Scheme and the Energy Company Obligation, version 4. These are government-backed schemes allowing people to have heavily discounted and in some cases free home insulation. The idea, of course, is to combat fuel poverty. Perhaps making fuel cheaper would help to do that, but insulation is no bad thing anyway. So here's a diagram just to give you an idea of how it works. So here they are, GBIS and Eco4. Both schemes are administered by the big utility companies, and the main difference between them is that while GBIS is more of a centrally funded direct subsidy, Eco4 is funded by a compulsory levy on utility bills. Now, I'm not going to get into whether that amounts to a stealth tax or not, but it's worth knowing where the money's coming from. So far, there's been an estimated £4.6 billion spent on this scheme to improve home insulation. Now, that would sound great if it were not for the fact that the insulation and the performance of many of those who've been installing it has been, frankly, abysmally bad. And that story is borne out in the numbers inside the report. So we'll take a quick look at those now, just to see the scale of the problem. Now, by far and away, the biggest problems associated with these schemes are those connected with wall insulation, both internal and external. Based on performance figures, the committee estimates that there are in excess of 30,000 homes that have some kind of insulation defect that needs to be resolved. I'll just say that again. That's in excess of 30,000 homes that someone's going to need to go back to and repair whatever the problems are. These problems could include poor insulation performance, it's not delivering the benefits it's supposed to, water ingress, inadequate ventilation, and in the worst cases, damp and mould, which are an immediate threat to health and well-being. Now, the external wall cladding is by far the worst offender, with an estimated 98% of installations being defective in some way. I'll just say that again. That's 98% of installations that are estimated to have some sort of defect with them. And indeed, to quote the report itself, it says, quote, "This is the worst rate of failure we have seen in the chair's approximately 12 years on the committee." Now, with problems on such a massive scale, we can expect the utility companies to lean very hard on their contractors to make good any problems that they've caused during these installations. Now, that should take care of some of the problems, but what if the installer goes broke, goes out of business, liquidates? Well, the report does say, quote, "The original installer is liable for fixing the installation, and costs up to £20,000 should be covered by a guarantee when the installer has ceased to trade or fails to remediate." It's rather telling that the committee found it necessary to mention this, as we're already seeing evidence of more than a couple of Phoenix companies pulling the old trick of going into liquidation and then restarting with a new name and a new logo to avoid their responsibilities under the guarantee. In fact, so systemic is this problem, or the danger of this problem emerging in the future, that one of the recommendations of the committee is that the Department of Energy and Net Zero, quote, confirm that it is now working with Companies House and the Insolvency Service to reduce the risk of incompetent and dishonest company directors closing and restarting their businesses. Now this of course leads on to their other recommendation, which is, quote, we think that the Serious Fraud Office should consider this matter. I know everyone's shocked to learn that we have a government contract splurging billions of pounds around, which has been raised through coercive taxation and compulsory levies, and the results are at best inadequate. Not only that, it seems unusually vulnerable to what could charitably be called sharp practice, if not outright fraud. But really, is anyone surprised? I doubt it. The only thing that surprised me is that the media hasn't paid more attention to it. There have been a couple of articles, but nothing like the stink you would expect. But then, when you consider the priorities of our own media here in the UK, it shouldn't be surprising either. Right now, we're on day 2 of Orange Man Said a Bad Thing, so we know what they think is important. Again, this lack of concern shouldn't be hugely surprising, as the green gravy train wants to keep on rolling with its massive subsidies and NGO industrial complex. So, will anything come of this? I sincerely doubt it. We'll get the usual platitudes from government, the department and the big utility companies. Lessons will be learned, things will be looked into, procedures will be tightened up. Does anyone really believe it? I don't, and I wonder if anyone out there does either. Anyway, that's it for the Naton State this time. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you all again very soon.